Okay. Okay, cool. Hello, people. My stream is working again. So, um, thank you for coming. And I don't know why OBS doesn't feel like showing my camera today, so you're just going to hear me. But I'm probably going to be animated and emotive anyway, so just know that you're missing out on me flailing my arms around. But welcome to our Tuesday class, where we are going to discuss storyboarding. And so a few things. I've been getting a lot of questions about the final assignment. So a few things. The final assignment, first of all, I want people to chill out about the final assignment right now, mainly because, like, I know that you did the pitch, but all of the homeworks are, and I probably didn't explain this very well, so here I'm going to explain it. The homeworks in the class are building to the final assignment. Does that make sense? I'm asking you like you're in front of me, but like maybe if somebody in the chat window says it makes sense, let me know. But your weekly assignments are things that are like building you to the final assignment. So basically what you're doing is through the weekly assignments, you are building parts of what eventually will become your big projects. The big projects of the class are a storyboard and an animatic. So yeah, thank you, person who gave me feedback. All right, thank you for the feedback. That helps. So essentially, like the homeworks are going to guide you to those things. So that's why there's not like in my classes I usually have that sort of big sheet that talks about it. It's that, all of those are sprinkled throughout the homework. So they're basically kind of like divided up. But the two big things you're going to do are storyboards and animatics. Now, what are those things? Well, that's why we have this giant slide that says storyboarding, because that's what we're going to discuss today. So actually, your questions have been well timed. Now, if anybody's worried about, because I know there's like people are at different levels of drawing experience. Remember, the drawing exercises serve a few functions. Somebody says, yeah, thing that's built over time. Yeah, and I mean, like, if you're in my games for education class, it's very similar to that, where like, that class, for example, it's like make a little prototype, play test. It alternates like make something week, play test week, make something week, play test week. So that's kind of, it keeps you on like a project schedule, but the idea is that you're building up over time, and that's what this class is too. It's like you're building up over time. My personal teaching style, especially with like projects, is that I don't really see a point of having projects and homework compete with each other for your attention. I'd rather you put in the time on your portfolio pieces and have the homework support you in those portfolio pieces and kind of give you a production schedule. Also so that you don't like crunch on them. Keeps you from procrastinating and rushing to get it done. That's the thing, is like it reduces crunch time. So, you're going to make something much better if you are scheduling yourself time over an extended period of time than if you're like trying to get it done last minute. Now, this class is weird because, like, yes, you're making the storyboard and animatic, but we're also having you do a bunch of homeworks. And that's why we did schedule them as homeworks, because we want you to just be allowed to practice. And again, the drawing exercises exist, even though they don't necessarily always lead up to like the animatic. Like you may or may not. You certainly could do rough animations for your animatic. And we can talk about that. But, the drawing assignments serve a few purposes. One is, again, if you're not familiar with having to come up with creative ideas, and you're not familiar with drawing, if you don't have that experience, these are still important, vital skills in the animation and game design fields. So this is your time to practice. This is your time to just like try drawing and sketching. And if you make something that's not so bad, that's not so good, that's okay. The goal is not perfection. The goal is like that you do it, and then that somebody can look at it and be like, hey, maybe try this next time. Because it's not that we're judging you or giving you like bad points if it's not perfect. Quite the opposite. It's, I look and like, oh, did they do it? Did they do it to the letter of the assignment? Yes, I award thee the points. The point is that, this is how creators develop. And if you're not sitting there through those hard parts, you're not going to get to the easy good part. So it's okay to, like I said, it's okay to suck at first. If that's where you're feeling, that's fine. The goal is that you just keep going, because you want to develop those fundamental things. And I asked some people in the industry a few days ago, like what their perspective on it was. Do they still use like hand drawing and things like that? And the answers that I got were overwhelmingly like, yes, this is the basis of what I do. This is how I think. I can sketch something quickly in a meeting and then show it to somebody and people will be like, aha, I get it. So, just, this is our permission. This is like us telling you that you have permission to just like slow down and practice at drawing. So that you can, so that's the one function. The other function it has is, again, you're practicing the skill, like the principles of animation. And once we get into, like, some of you are doing some of it in your things right now, but when we get into the principles of animation and have those lectures, it'll be like, hey, have something like do anticipation. And some of you may know what that is, some of you may not. That's okay. I haven't taught you yet. Have something do squash and stretch. You can do that. Like, that's just your time to work that out and experience it and get a feeling for what that means. I'm looking at the camera like I don't have a camera. But, the drawing things, everything's homework so that you have time to say, like, I don't need to worry about other stuff in this class. I just need to worry about, not worry about, but I get to practice drawing. I get to practice X, Y, or Z. And I know some people have been like having some problems with Blender. Hey, somebody asked me a question last night. Sounds like things worked out, but like, yeah, send me something. It's cool. Like, it's only an issue when like I can tell people aren't putting in the effort. So it's just like, put in the effort. And like, let's put it this way. I know we can tell when somebody is like rolling over at the first difficulty versus like, I worked at this for 6 hours and I still can't figure it out. Just like, let us know, like, try it, look at documentation, figure things out. 'Cause like, sometimes things change in features over versions and stuff. We ran into that at the beginning, if you remember. Like, it was like, oh no, this tutorial was made in 8.0 and it's or 0.80 and it's 0.83 and they overhauled the physics system. But yeah, just like give it a good college try to seek out an answer. Use those other resources. But if it's still not clicking, then like, really when you ask for stuff, when you ask for like the help with the software, make sure you have a really clear question and make sure that like, screenshots help. Because I mean, the tough part is that like, I can't see your screen. So if you're just like, it's broken, and it's like, I can't help with that. But if you can be like, hey, I'm clicking here, and then you like have a screenshot, and even like your mouse is in the shot, or like you make a little red circle or something like that. Annotate it for us. We can talk. So, it seems like people are getting a hang of it though. There's always going to be tech issues, like anytime you adopt a new piece of tech, but like the stuff that I've been seeing, videos and GIFs and things look like you all are clicking with it, and that's really awesome. Like that's great. So hang in there with the drawing stuff. It is your chance to practice. I know, like, people are stressing over it and trying to like make sure it's exactly the right thing. It's practice. It's trial and error. It's exploration. Like, take it seriously in terms of like turning it in, but don't take it so seriously in terms of like, I want you to engineer a solution. This is art. This is art practice. Happy accidents. Get all Bob Rossy but watch some Bob Ross, then do your drawing stuff. That's my tip. So let me know if there are any questions. Let me know if there are any discussion points. But let's talk about storyboarding. So storyboarding. What is storyboarding? Well, so we've gone through the stages of animation where we've talked about pre-production, and we've talked about like how story ideas are built, right? And so the thing with animation, the thing with modern animation, is that a lot of it is, most of creating an animation is not the actual animating. Now we are doing stuff, and we did some like foundational lectures, and we're having you do the exercises so that you can develop that skill, because that skill, it takes a long time and a lot of trial and error to do, which is why we want, again, it's a trial and error thing. It's not like it must be to these exact specifications. Like it should be to some, but you know what I mean. Like, I just want you to draw so you can feel animation happen, and what you get a feeling for animation. Do you want us to do our storyboards in Blender traditionally or what? Thank you for asking that. So storyboards can be done in, they can be done digitally in like Photoshop. They don't need to be done in Blender. Let's put it this way. I don't really care what they're in. So actually, that's a really good question, because and I know this isn't going to be the answer you're expecting. The way that this is a case of the classes becoming not about your tools. Does that make? I hope that makes sense. So like for storyboarding, I expect pictures of I expect a story, like a pictorial storyboard. And if that's a picture of a bunch of index cards with sketches on your wall, like a photo of like them hung up on a bulletin board, that's cool. If it's if you scan those index cards in to your computer, that's cool. If you make a thing in Photoshop, that's cool. But this is where, and I actually just talked to the FYE students, the first year students, and one of the things that I told them, because like they want me to come in sometimes, like do these sort of broad lessons about the major or the career or something like that. And I'm really glad you asked this question, because it lets me share that information with you, or at least reiterate it, which is your career is not about the tool. Like you have tools, but they're really just tools in a toolbox or an art box, or in a tool belt. And your career is not your tool. You are not, we're not ITT Tech. Sorry for anybody who knows somebody or maybe took classes at ITT Tech. But I think they've been bankrupt for a few years though. So we're not that school where you go get like a CAD certificate and then your career is CAD or about CAD. And then you end up in that situation with like that guy where it's like, oh no, new program, I'm sunk. You are not the program. You are not, that's not your value. You are a person, you are a creator. And being that creator means that you can, okay, so I can talk smack. Not that I'm trying to talk smack. It's just like there's a model of education that is like school for profit that trains you in thing, and like it's schools for profit are predatory. I can talk a lot about that, but I'm not going to. But you know, so there's that kind of education. You're not in that kind of education. You're in a 4-year baccalaureate degree for which we are like seeking art school accreditation, right? Almost have it. But the, you know, the thing you're going to do, you're going to see tons of software come and go. You're going to have a project that you're going to say, you know, it'd be a pain in the butt to do this in Unity. So what if I did it in something smaller and simpler that'll let me do it in a few mouse clicks instead of in a bunch of other things? You know, it's totally like you're in the point in your education where you're starting to get to make those calls. And that's what I'm asking you to do with the storyboard. It's like, what is the, you know, I try not to use people's names. Imagine, like, what is your storyboard, right? What's your workflow and process? That's what I want. I want you to master your process. So like, here's an example. Some of you are having like, you and Blender are not clicking, and you've expressed that. And like, you've had a few exercises under your belt. Like, would I care if you came in and said, can I just hand animate this and like do a flip book or like put it together in Premiere? That sounds like a little bit more work, but like if you can do it fast and you're the person who can do that fast, sure. Or if you are the person who's like, I like animating in Photoshop, fine. Like, you know, if I've sounded like I want to like push it a little bit, it's not because of Blender, it's because I want you to not give up. But we're like almost at midterm, and if it's like blowing you up, then, you know, I still want you to do hand drawn because I want you to have that like easy access to things. People are almost like, so there's a few people who are like, yeah, I can tell want to do it all in 3D. My trepidation about that is that 3D creates more work because then you're rigging and you're texturing and you're, you know, doing a lot of stuff. Whereas like drawing is just like boop, 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 drawing. So, you know, I still want it hand drawn, but like now you can start to like make, you know, start to get used to making those decisions. Because again, like if you take my other class, you're going to see really quickly, it's like, well, what is the most appropriate thing for your project? Like for your game, like who's your audience? Do they have computer access? That's always my example, but it's like, find the thing for your creativity, and you're starting to get there. So in terms of like the storyboard, you know, pencil on index card, Photoshop, like whatever is going to be your process is really good. And we're going to talk about what the act of storyboarding is like, so that'll help you hopefully make some decisions. So, so like today we're going to talk about what are the functions of storyboards, what is the process of storyboarding, what is the method of storyboarding, and then like what comes after that. So first of all, what is storyboarding? I'm not just going to read this slide, but basically you have your script, you might even have your radio play, or it could be developed in concert with the radio play. You know, but the idea is that remember I said that animation actually you answer all the questions before you get down to drawing. The drawing should almost like be just the act of like actually executing the thing, but all this planning goes into it so that there's like no question about what you're actually making. So you've made a script, you might have a radio play either in production or already in your hands. What you do with a storyboard is you are taking that script and you're creating almost an outline, like a visual outline of what the shots are. Now, a few of you, and I say this to use it as an example, not to like be like wagging my finger at anybody. So on the donut assignment, I gave feedback to a few people that was like, hey, make sure you compose your shot, because I could tell like some people kind of like clicked the render button and turned it in, and that's okay. You're new designers, you're learning. The lesson that came from that, and it's like, a happy accident learning moment thing. Like I said, I'm not saying this to wag my finger. I'm saying this because like the learning moment there was like, hey, this opens up an opportunity to talk about composition. And, it may not always feel like it, but where you position a camera, where you put a shot, how you arrange a shot is a decision you need to make. This is, being like a cinematographer. So that's what storyboards are. This is you laying out your shots and laying out what the motions in general are. So you see the storyboard and you see like the guy bows his head, that has a little arrow. The woman turns away, that has little arrows. You can see the shading, see the lighting, and that gives you an idea of like, it's almost stage direction. You have the sketch of the scene, but you have arrows indicating what stuff is moving where and if the shot's moving. So again, done after the script's been written, helps you visualize the story and the major movements, and then like a comic strip of your eventual animation. So it's like you're making a comic. Now, I already mentioned this in Discord chat, but because, obviously this is normally an in-person class, I have some YouTube links here. So this one is one for Pixar in a Box. It's a storyboarding lesson. I posted that to the animation links thing in Discord, the channel in Discord. So I would say take some time, like maybe this afternoon, to go check those out, because this actually will, you get to watch like a Pixar storyboard artist sit down and like, re-storyboard, because the movie had already been made at the time of the tutorial video, but like he has the script to Ratatouille next to him and he's like laying out what, according to this script, like what should these shots look like. And he's talking about like, I'm going to make the camera be looking up at Ego because I want to express this, that, and the other thing about him as a character. So there's, you get to watch that in action. So it's just like, go watch it after the lecture. Let me know if there's any questions about this so far. Like, again, I'm just going to keep going. But, so to do storyboards, you really need to think about, and some of this is in your green book, your ideas for the animated short, but like, you start to think about film grammar. And that might sound like a really weird phrase at first, but really what it means is that, we talked about this before when I talked about like animation it's not just making things move. It's not simulation of reality. It's representation, it's abstraction, and it's communication. And like when we learn the principles of animation, those exist because it's you signaling to a person that this thing is alive in different ways, so that the audience's eye and brain accept it as alive. Because, again, Bugs Bunny doesn't look like a bunny, so you can't animate him like a real bunny. You have to animate him like Bugs Bunny. And that involves a lot of like, nods to the audience like, all right, this is about to happen before an action can happen. Well, film grammar is our way to express storytelling through how we position camera and lay out the shot. So you don't just put stuff in a scene and then render it. You position your camera, you put things like in the foreground and the background and have different relationships to each other. Those relationships can start to talk about who the character is. Are they somebody in power or not in power? Are they, our main character that we're supposed to be paying attention to, or are they a side character? If something's happening in the background, so a really good movie to look at for this is like if you were to watch the movie Citizen Kane. That is the movie that is like often credited with being one of the first examples of cinematography as storytelling. And they would do things like, have characters do their dialogue, like find somebody find something in a room and have a conversation about it and wonder what happened. And then the thing that indicates to you, the audience, of what really happened is in the foreground. But the characters don't see it. Their dialogue says nothing about it, but the cinematography is telling you, the viewer, what happened. So that's how film grammar works. That's how composition and communication work in film. So what are some of the elements of film grammar? A frame is a single still image. So think of it like, if we are literally doing grammar, so our frame is like a letter in a word. A shot is a single continuous. Wes Anderson does oh my gosh, Wes Anderson, yes. Wes Anderson has really great cinematography to the point where like his shots are like dioramas, which makes total sense because he always makes actual little dioramas. So if people don't know who Wes Anderson is, Isle of Dogs, Grand Budapest Hotel, the Royal Tenenbaums, Moonrise. I'm a huge Wes Anderson fan. We have like a Wes Anderson collection at home and the book. He does really great storytelling and cinematography and color theory. His colors are wonderful. So a shot is a single continuous recording made by a camera. So like that is a square of your storyboard is a shot. Now that's like, is the camera on a person's face? Is it moving, panning, whatever. So that's a shot. That's a word in your sentence. A scene is a series of related shots. So like a scene of your story, and you plan out that scene in like what the shots in the scene are going to be. So that's like what you see in the Pixar video that you should watch, that's in the Discord. That'll show you like, I have this scene, and this scene is composed of these camera movements and shots. Fantastic Mr. Fox, yes. Somebody said Fantastic Mr. Fox, which is another Wes Anderson, which is it and Isle of Dogs are fully animated too. So that's a great animated movie that I should probably have more case studies from because it's really wonderful. But yeah, it's so... The language of that movie is so clear. And then a sequence is a series of scenes which together tell a major part of an entire story. So a sequence could be like Act 1, things like that. But, that's like your paragraph of your... if a movie is an essay, then your sequences of like chunks of story are your paragraphs, your scenes are your individual sentences and things like that. So... we talk about those sorts of things. The elements, getting into the actual shots, framing is like composition of a shot. What is the camera looking at? And what is in the shot? So, this is actually like when photography was a new art, there was a bunch of arguments over whether photography was an art because the human was not generating the image. They were, you were just capturing reality. So, and obviously like these, if that sounds like what, but remember this was, this would have been the mid 19th century, early 20th century. So, and that's what film had to deal with, is like, you're not recreating reality. You're not creating images. You are recording images. So people were like, no, film's not an art. But once you get the idea where people start looking at photography and looking at film and saying, actually, I am composing these shots because I am composing these images because I control what is captured by the camera by moving the camera, positioning the camera, organizing what's in the foreground and background. It's not just random. Then that becomes grammar, which can become a language and critical discourse, which becomes an art. That's what we see with games now, is, that conversation is happening. So framing is like, where's the camera pointing and what's in the shot? Staging, so framing is, staging is where you are putting those things. So like, the example here is like, framing is, I want to put the teacher in the frame because the teacher is giving a lecture. Staging is starting to think about, okay, so the teacher is giving a lecture, but we have this other character in the frame, and where do we put that character in the frame in relation to the teacher such that we start to tell a story? So if the teacher is giving their lecture and you have a bored student in the foreground, what is it telling us about this, like, these two characters in this moment in time? Motion is like, how does the camera move, and how does that do things in relation to the characters in action? So like, here you have the example is like, the teacher sees that the character is like doodling or not paying attention. So how do you have the camera either literally move in the same shot or transition to another shot such that it gives us an idea of like what is happening? So if we're looking from a low shot up at the teacher and the teacher is leaning down, as illustrated here, that is motion. That is creating a transition to tell us something. It's not that we just have the teacher, like, imagine that shot, like in the motion row of the teacher pointing down at the student, like, pay attention, right? If you had that shot in the framing that's in the top of the right side of the first row where the teacher's just in front of the board, it would be incredibly ineffective because that teacher is not, there's nothing about that shot that's emphasizing her motion. It would be kind of flat. So you want to like compose the shot such that it really accentuates what's going on. And then editing, after all your shots are created, and often you will take multiple versions of multiple shots. Maybe not in animation, but definitely in filming. But what you do is you take all these shots and you load them into your editing program, and you chop them up and you mix and match them, and that will generate your actual like movie. So editing itself involves clear decision making, because if you have like a crossfade or quick cut, or if you're having like things cut really quickly, that increases the like tempo of the movie versus like nice long drawn out shots, kind of transitioning slowly. So you can do a lot with how you compose a movie. So these are all things that like you may think are kind of out of your control, but they're totally in your control. So shots, I'm not going to go, through, well, I can describe some of them like pretty quickly, but the type of shot you use helps determine the feeling of the framing. From everything from like extreme long and long shots, again, some of this is in your textbook material. So like long shots feel very different. Like that might be just sort of a character in a scene versus like an extreme long shot might be like characters waiting for the bus. So they are far away from the camera. There's a bus stop. There's other people on their phones or something like that. And you get an extreme long shot. But if you need like a close-up, sudden revelation, or, you know, a character is thinking deeply, and you might have a more close-up shot. So shot sizes matter in terms of like what you're trying to convey and what you're trying to focus on and what you're trying to tell. Shot angles, again, these are if you are like, what are you trying to say about, you know, things happening. So like a low shot might be character is nervous and you want to focus on that by having this like out of kilter shot. Same thing with like canted is, you know, like, oh man, I just found out something bad happened. You know, how does that shot work to like rock that character's world? Eye level does a very particular type of thing that's like more normal conversational. It feels very stable. High shot, like looking down on a character, might be like the character is intimidated or feels small. Worm's eye, on the flip side, is like this character is like, oh man, the principal's here. It got real. Like the principal has come into the class. So then you might do like a worm's eye at the principal. You know, bird's eye. I'm at the spelling bee and I'm super nervous, but I'm also in this I'm in this context that makes me super nervous. So bird's eye could be like, it's you, the character is very small on the screen, and then like there's a crowd around them. So you can do all kinds of things with shots, but it's all about storytelling. Shot organization, again, how characters are staged. You know, if you're going to have characters arguing, you don't want to have the characters arguing be like on the same side of the shot. It's more effective to have them like, you know, unless you're doing like an Aaron Sorkin walk down the hallway shot. I don't even know if you all know who like Aaron Sorkin is, but like, you know, when I was in college, like The West Wing was big, and they'd always have the shot where like his trademark is the shot where two characters talk about a thing while walking down a hallway. And it just follows them. But, you know, unless you're trying to do something like really stylized like that, usually you're going to have characters on different sides. You know, if they're arguing like on different sides of the frame, you know, that's how you compose the shot. Same thing as like the characters fishing on the bottom of this, you know, image. They are like, maybe one is thinking and the other is like trying to press them on something. Like, well, you know, maybe they're having kind of a deep conversation, and guy in foreground is like, you want to really focus on his face and his body language, and the one in the background, well, you want to focus on his face and his emotions, and then still body language, but he's more of like a mass. And then the body language of the character in the background is more like inquisitive and you know, kind of leaning into trying to like press this person on a question. Let me know if there are any questions. Please ask questions about this. Like this is, you know, this is like, I always say, I always cite this one game designer, Rami Ismail, who they just recently shut down their studio of Vlambeer. They like decided to go in different directions, but you know, if you don't know who Vlambeer is, they made Nuclear Throne, Ridiculous Fishing, Super Crate Box, a bunch of like cool indie action games. But he talks about like easy questions and hard questions in creativity. And he said the easy questions are actually the tech questions. And some of you might be like, what? But here's why those are easy questions. They have objective answers. They have like, oh, just press that button. Or, you know, something that's in the documentation. Like there is an answer to that question that is the same every time. Hard questions are creative questions because they are the questions for which there's not an objective answer. It's sort of like you have to make up the answer to the question because you are the creator. So like if you're trying to compose a shot, there are good things to do with the language of film, but ultimately like, let's say you know everything about the language of film. Let's say you like really, you go through this, you read the textbook, you've learned the language of film really well. You learn all the rules. You learn all the principles of animation. You've mastered them. And you make a film. And you make a film that breaks all of those rules. There are some people that'd be like, well, this is bad because you broke all the rules. And then but you can always say, well, I broke that rule because by setting up the person to think this was about to happen and then subverting it by making the other thing happen, it plays with the audience and, does XYZ to XYZ artistic effect. Somebody may not like it, but you laid out your creative vision, you laid out your creative direction. It may not be the direction that somebody else made, but damn it, you justified it. And you see this a lot with film directors. I think, what was it? When Stanley Kubrick died, I think, was it Steven Spielberg finished one of his movies, and because they had very different styles, but also were on like friendly terms, or like, were friends, but like acknowledged their creative, like stylized differences, as a tribute to his friend, he decided to, I think it was Eyes Wide Shut. He like decided to make the movie in the exact opposite way of how Kubrick would do it, as like an element of, just that's how their creative friendship was. But creative questions are hard because there are guidelines, but you kind of ultimately make the call. But as long as you're making informed calls, nobody can tell you you're wrong. They can just not like it, but that's okay. It's okay if somebody doesn't like it. That's just, Now, on the flip side, if you make something lazy or bad, and then you say that's my style, people won't buy that. Don't try that one. But, if you are coming from a place of being super duper informed and you can justify all your decisions, you can do whatever you want. Again, except from being like negative or toxic. Don't do that. So what is staging about? Staging, you've heard me mention this before, but now this is the silhouette slide. And what does that mean? Well, the silhouette slide is where I really use this image that is like the perfect image for demonstrating silhouettes. So silhouettes are, if you took a frame of animation and blacked in all of the characters, you would be able to read what's happening. So this duck magician is pulling a rabbit out of his hat. If you have duck magician pulling the rabbit out of the hat on the left, you can see that even blacked out, that silhouette still reads. We get it. There is a duck magician, like we see that there is a person, or not a person, a duck, and we don't know who the duck is. So let's assume that we don't have the reference image. We see that the duck is pulling this duck-shaped object is pulling this vaguely rabbit-shaped object out of a vaguely hat-shaped object. So we can guess what's going on, and then if the lights go on and we see duck magician pulling rabbit out of hat, aha, we got it. But if we have the same scene drawn as it is on the right, well, there's a few things going on here one, if this is indeed depicting the same thing, then it's the worst version, because if we silhouette it out, we don't know what's going on. We don't even know if this is a duck. We just see this like kind of shape that seems to have arms and seems to have duck feet, but we can't quite tell because the hat's in the way. So when the lights go on, then now we see what's happening. But this is also bad because if it is the same scene, it actually kind of looks like the duck is sneaking the rabbit into the hat, like he's plotting. So the body language is kind of weird here. But, that's all stuff you have to think about. And if you look in your textbook animation crash course, you see examples in some of the, and these are all like the readings. So go check out the readings. And if not even like read one-to-one, go look at the images and what they're trying to convey. because you will see examples of shots where, like, you know, there's one set of images in that book that I think is really good for this, where it's like, it's non-copyright infringing 101 Dalmatians, basically, but you have like husband and wife on one side, and they're just kind of like standing like normal, and then Bruella Beville is standing on other side of frame. Well, at least they're on the other sides of the frame from each other, but they're just standing like straight, like real human beings would do. But you know, on version 2, Bruella Beville is like leaning towards like the couple and pointing her finger, and then you know, and we could talk about like the gender roles in this, which I think are unfortunate, but like otherwise it's a good image. You know, husband is standing like, so his posture is diagonal, and his chest is puffed out, like in a sort of like confrontational stance, and then, you know, his wife is like on the other side of him, you know, and again, there's some social stuff going on there which is a little icky, but you know, in terms of composition, the shot communicates this, like, here are the two sides, here are the roles that this action is happening. You can see what the story in general is, as opposed to if they were standing like stock straight. And then the other thing with like staging, and I have an example of like some 3D characters, in addition to, remember, we are representing, we are not simulating. In real life, if you're talking to somebody, you'd stand straight in front of them. You would not be turned towards like a camera, right? But you want to turn your characters towards the camera a little bit, so even if they are talking, and that's not necessarily how things happen in real life, it communicates the idea of talking better, and you see the characters better. I hope that makes sense. Let me know what you think in the chat. There has been some like good discussion so far. So again, like staging, let's look at this shot from Wreck-It Ralph. This is a really well composed shot, because you see all of the characters. There is a way to do this shot, like especially of characters in a circle, that you could not see anybody. And they would not be distinct. But you can see all the characters, and they are very distinct because the camera positioning is just so. Ralph is in the center, you know, both because he's like, the other characters are distanced from him. He's in the center of the shot. He's in like the top third, and like rule of thirds is a thing in shots, which is, you know, really helpful for like creating an interesting shot. So he's not in the center, he's in the like top center, so the shot is immediately more interesting. But he is the character in the center. You can see even the angle makes Clyde, the ghost from Pac-Man, off center, so we know that Clyde is not the center of attention here. Ralph is. And then all the other characters are positioned kind of like leaned back from Ralph, so they're kind of out of his way while he's leaning forward. And then all of the characters are seen on the screen. They're all positioned so they're all out of each other's way, and we can see all of them. And part of that is because, you know, Nintendo paid good money, or, well, maybe, I think Disney's the one that paid good money, but like, you know, Nintendo wants Bowser on the screen, right? So all of the characters are composed in such a way that you can tell, like, there's Bowser. Robotnik is kind of hard to see. He's got an unfortunate situation there. But Sonic gets to be in later in the movie. But like, you know, the Beholder is sitting there. Like, you can see it. You can see the Mortal Kombat characters. You can see Diablo. I can see M. Bison. Like, I see who these characters are. And it's the generic ones that are harder to see because who cares about them? So, you know, but this shot is incredible because of the staging. It works because of the staging, and we can clearly both see what the story is, and, you know, again, see all the characters that, like, for corporate reasons, people are like, oh, we want you to see this character of ours. Shot motion. How you move the camera in relation to the characters creates different feelings. By panning, so there's pans. Panning is, when you're kind of like going around the character. Crabbing is like just sort of across. Tracking is, in and out. Zooming is, so like tracking is you would like physically move the camera. Zooming is you change the setting of the camera so that it zooms in. So, going up and down a character, and then tilting up again, so like that you're changing the orientation of the camera so that you are getting that worm's eye to normal or normal to bird's eye kind of view. But those motions also, again, create different transitions from one thing to another. So again, hit me up with questions, please. If this is giving you lots of things to talk about, I want to hear them. Building storyboards. So storyboards are, again, they're outlines of shots. You're building the script into a comic strip. And the important thing about storyboards is like storyboards can be very artistic, but they can also be like super sketchy. And they are a communication and planning tool. They are not a museum piece, if that makes sense. And like sometimes you will see storyboard. Like I've tried to keep storyboards off of this slideshow. Like if you Google image search storyboard, you're going to see these like incredible like things that you'd want to have like maybe even hung up in your house. That's not what a storyboard is for. They are quick. They are drafts. They are getting ideas across. They are sketches. So, here's one that's just like, quick sketching. But you can see like, we have some dialogue, like shot of character face, shot of character face, shot of character face a little farther out so you can see more of their body language, shot of characters together so that you can see their body language. So there's some back and forth, but there's also like a wider shot so that you can see their body language. And again, you can see like you have them, you see under each one is the line of dialogue that's happening in that scene. So when you're doing your storyboards, yes, put the line of dialogue, write it in or, do something. Question from earlier was like, oh, what do we have to do them in? Can they be in Blender? Things like that. If, if you want to, you can go find like a storyboard document like this. And, this will actually like a storyboard template. Like go get something like this. These are super helpful too. And this will help you, maybe lay them out, but also have a nice space to type in your dialogue. The downside of these, though, is that you can't like work. I'll show you what that means I'll show you what I'm trying to get at in a second. Like, there's a downside to these sheets, though. So, like, on the flip side, this one is not dialogue. This one is motion. So what's happening here? Well, again, we have sketching, and you can kind of see what the like geometry and the setting is. But again, in like a super quick form, you're just trying to get an idea of like what the shot composition should be. You're not trying to like make this perfect art item. But you see like lots of arrows, lots of diagrams. I mean, like he comes from here, he goes there. He comes from here, he goes there. So that's why these are useful, is like you are making diagrams, so you should make motion paths like with arrows of where's the camera moving. Like if a shot has a zoom, you want to like have an arrow that's like camera zooms in, on character face. You want to be able to diagram that out. And then of course all the way down to like, here is a high-end thing if you so choose. So this is one of like a commercial. But guy is like businessman doing business. Yes, I have to go do some business. And then he like walks into the garage and he goes to his very businessman car, but he's like, but what if not business? and then he goes out on the open road on his cool bike. So, you know, there's, and then it would like presumably be like Honda or something like that. But, you know, that's the you know, really you get a sense of the storytelling from this. This is a very simple thing, but like you can see how the scene composition contributes to a story. It's really strong. But not, the draftsmanship does not need to be like this in every storyboard. This just happened to be super high draftsmanship. So, you know, presumably though, like this helped with client meetings. Like this is great if you're an animator talking to animators, but this is like, I could see this storyboard working better in client meetings who like wouldn't understand the visual language of this. So, you know, keep in mind. So yeah, storyboarding is kind of like, you know, architects pitching. And I mentioned like this would be for a client type meeting. You get that, like you get a sense of this, like, hi, I'm pitching to this for this competition, or I'm pitching to an audience. But again, like animators talking to each other, you know, you're still doing this pitching, but it can be a little like rougher. And this I think is a video, but like this is actual animators looking at storyboards. Like these are Pixar animators looking at storyboards for a movie, and so you can see like how many storyboards there are. This is a whole feature film's worth, right? I did have a really good question in the chat maybe last week, but somebody said, you know, how long are we making? And I realized I didn't discuss that very well. So you're not making like a movie. Don't make a movie. Because you're like one person or maybe a few people working together. You don't have the resources. Unless all of you have like $1 million. Well, you can't even make a whole movie for $1 million. But you know what I mean? Like unless you have a ton of money and a ton of time, which you have neither of those for this. We're talking like 30-second to a minute max for what you're planning. And then in an ideal world, some of these animatics and storyboards you're going to make might even feed into the animation project class that you're going to take next semester. You know, you're going to still work in groups, so maybe not every animation will be made, but those are typically between a minute and a minute and a half of animation. So, you know, think about that when you're doing this, is like start to build out, you know, it may not be the entire minute and a half, but it'll be like a good chunk of a short. And then maybe you do make it to a minute and a half. I don't know. But like, that's kind of you know, all those make up like a feature film. So you're going to have like really a few, you know, a much smaller set than this. But again, like the storyboarding, and this gets into like what's the downside of those like nice sheets. The downside of the nice sheets is that, so see, they are pitching each other the story again. They're doing this. Feels like this. Really is more like this. Literally it's like that. But see, they're all doing it on index cards. The index cards are really important. Here's that shot again. But the index cards are important because, you know, here's another one. Why you do it on index cards, and you can see this person is in like the middle of this. So when you have your shots and you're drafting out your storyboard, and it's the same thing with like pitching a story idea. Everything's on index cards, so that what you can do then is that if you decide that it actually works better tonally for the story, or it's funnier or whatever, for things to be switched, then you can switch them. You can move the index cards around. And one thing that's really great about the index cards is that, like, again, let's say that, you know, this is not a presentation, this is not like a make it or break it process. This is an exploratory process. This is a communication and pitching process. And why that matters, why that distinction is super important, because again, make it sketchy, make it quick, because you're trying things. And sometimes those things will not work, and that's okay. You're trying to kill in game design, we'd call it unfun of the thing you're making. You're trying to kill the bad shots and the bad story ideas before they go into actual production, and then you realize, oh wait, our cartoon sucks. So what I mean by this is like, you know, if you have some shots and if the shot is bad or it doesn't make sense in the story, or it would like, I don't know, slow things down, whatever, and it's on an index card, you know, you can take that index card off the wall and be like, all right, well, maybe not this one, but maybe instead like make it like this. And then you can like write that down, and then you can draw a new card, not right there, but like when you go back to your desk or whatever. But you'd draw a new card, and then you'd put that in the storyboard, and then next time you got together, you'd like see like, all right, last time we talked about this series of shots not working, here are some new ones. And then you can like go back to the next cards like, well, these are really good, switch these two, I think we've got it. I hope that makes sense. But like, it's this creative, iterative process where you are working out what the ideas should be. And then when you have it, that's when you like pin them up on the wall in front of you, and then can start like animating. You can start sitting down and be like, all right, now I'm going to actually do it. Now I'm going to like, my script is in front of me. I have the radio play. You're going to make your X sheet to work out all your timing with dialogue. And then, you know, then you've answered all the creative questions, most of them. Then you just got to sit down and draw or model and animate, you know? So that's what storyboarding is about. It's about sketching, taking a story, sketching it out, establishing what the storytelling element of like the composition of the shot is, pitching it to other people on your team, having a conversation about like, move this, change that shot, do that, doing that a few times, like this iterative process, to the point where you can like pin it up on your wall and say, I will draw my cartoon now. So that's what that's all about. Again, watch the YouTube videos. And then last thing, now again, because I don't, for copyright reasons, want to, this would be where I would just like show you some animatics, and then you'd like get it, but I instead put them in the Discord chat. But know this, what is an animatic? Well, because that again is your final project. Well, the animatic is nothing more than animated storyboards. So if you want to do, like if you want to take this extra step in your animation, some people do, some people don't, you will. But basically what you do is once you've established your storyboard, you take it, and then, you know, you might even have your music and dialogue. You might have that radio play. And you take that storyboard, and in something like Premiere or After Effects or whatever, you set the shots to the music and dialogue, so that like the visual will be wherever like it will be in the story. So like you'll have just the card, and you'll see this in the animatics that I shared. I shared three. I shared one for a Gorillaz music video, which is just the song, and then you'll see like the drawings will just like stay there motionless until like it's the next shot. So you'll see like the shots go by, and then if there's like a zoom or something on a character's face, it just zooms into the image. So it's almost like a animated slideshow. And then another one is a 3D animatic, where it is 3D models moving around, but there's no textures, you know, kind of barely modeled or unfinished characters. The characters move in that they move around, but they don't animate in their motion. So the character would like stand still but be moved across, like to indicate like the character leaves the shot, the character walks off, the character comes back, but they are not animated to have their arms and legs walk. And you'll see what I mean by that. But that's a 3D animatic. You know, if that's the direction people want to go. And then the third one is, it's actually something from your syllabus later down the line, but I included it in this. in this set of animatic examples, but there's one from early animatics from Spider-Verse, and that one's cool because you get actually a mix of 2D and 3D to make buildings. They like drew some lines on paper, scanned it, made that a texture in 3D so that they could do like building shots, and then the animations of Miles are just kind of like animatic motion comics. So you'll see what those are like, but it's really taking animatics are like another way of like saying, okay, we've got this timing. Now let's actually put the storyboard against the sound and see if I watch it like a movie, if the timing feels good. And then if the timing does feel good, then you you make all the motions of animation. So that's it. Any questions? Please have questions. This is an animatic from a show called Bluey that my kids watch. It's a really good show on Disney+. It's actually one of the rare kids shows that's like funny as an adult. Some of them aren't even funny as an adult. Well, they're funny, but in like the most cringeworthy episodes of The Office kind of way, because it's also like an episode for the parents. But I don't know. Please have questions. Do we need sound or voices in our animations? No, and mainly because, well, that's an interesting question because I did not put in that you must have sound or voices in your animations in any of my project directions. Let's put it that way. Should animation have sound? That would be good. And usually what people do in that class, because we are not, we show you like how to plan for dialogue and things like that, but we have not thus far required you to do mouth animations, if that makes sense. But what we have seen students do is like get a musical track and then have the musical track playing over it. So if you are planning something out like that, I would suggest maybe finding some like going to like a open sound library, something where you can get like free music and maybe lay that over your animatic. But that way, the benefit of that is that you can, if there are like beats in the music that will help you with like beats in your story or help you in transitions, like if the music gets like really starts to get exciting at a certain point, that can be a nice practice to like set your shots against like the villain appears and the music goes dun dun, like that kind of thing. So that stock music is a good friend. Yes. So yeah, I would think about that that level of involvement in sound. It can only make it better, if that makes sense. But yeah, animation project, there's typically like at least, like I said, a soundtrack. Usually not like a whole script. Some people are throwing in their favorite stock music websites. Also, I would the Free Internet Archive has a ton of music resources, so I've gotten some stuff from there as well. Any other questions? My animation is one scene. My animation is going to be one scene where small things move within it. Can you be more specific? So like really what you would do is you would start to, if it is one shot, you would storyboard something like, like this will move, then that will move, then that will move. So you're almost like planning out where things will move, or at least how you are going to like. You want to have things, I guess. It's almost like you're sketching how things are going to be laid out and how things are going to move and how those movements are going to be like telegraphed and in position to one another. Because like if you have things arranged and the camera never moves, then you need to start thinking about like, well, if I do have this move, how does it not get hidden behind other things? It's a girl sitting at her desk. She's writing and occasionally looks at her cat, and the cat in the background wags its tail. So I do think I think to get the most out of something like that, I mean, the reason, so a scene is like you're all making scenes, if that makes sense. You're all making like the scene of something, even if that scene constitutes your whole animation. If you're going to try to do everything as like a continuous shot, so I think like from what it sounds like is you maybe do want to consider having having different shots as things happen. So like, the character's writing and maybe your establishing shot is like that, characters at their desk writing and you can see both her and the cat, and that kind of establishes this is where these two characters are in relation to one another. But then if the character like looks up, you might want to like have a close-up of her face looking up, and then, to like some laid over, like the cat makes a sound and then it's a close-up of the character, cat makes a sound, character looks up, and that's like close-up on her face, and then, shot cut to cat. But that's all within one scene. Those are different shots within a scene. The alternative is like you would have, if you did want to do it all from one shot, your storyboard would still be like, what are the stages of things happening over the course of your animation? So like, at 10 seconds in, cat jumps off shelf and, does something, and then like 2 seconds later, cat re-enters scene, then you'd have like the cat jump onto the desk with like an arrow, and then like jingles a toy at the person writing while the person just like is writing oblivious with their headphones on or something like that. So like you would then basically use it as a comic strip of what the characters are doing in action over time if it is one shot. That's how you'd storyboard that though. Because remember, the storyboards, the individual cards and images are shots. They are not scenes. The scene is the whole story chunk. Well, I'm going to shut down the stream, but I will be around. I got to get my other class started soon, but I'm around on Discord and everything. So thank you for the great discussion. I will see you. There is no lecture Thursday. This is the lecture for the week. So don't worry about Thursday. But yeah, look forward to talking to everybody in Discord. So bye.